In 1912, Willa Bruce purchased oceanfront property along the Strand in what is today called Manhattan Beach. She ran a really popular lodge. There was a cafe and a dance hall, and it provided Black families a way to enjoy a weekend at the coast. The area became known as Bruce's Beach, and more Black families moved in, buying cottages all along the shore. But what happened next was nothing short of criminal. LA Times reporter Rosanna Xia shared the story. This is one of those stories, Rosanna, that just makes you wish for a time machine to go back and make it right. Let's start with the success of Bruce's Beach.
Yeah, this is such an important story. I'm so glad you're doing a segment on this. I mean, it really is a reflection of the bigger conversation that and reckoning that we're having in this country right now. So, I mean, Bruce's Beach today is technically the name of a grassy park overlooking the ocean in Manhattan Beach. Some folks told me that growing up, they just knew this stretch of beach as 26th Street for the lifeguard tower. But more than a century ago, in the early 1900s, a prominent Black couple, Willa and Charles Bruce, had come west, pioneers, bought two parcels of land, built a resort, a cafe, a popular dance hall, and transformed this whole area into a popular gathering place for Black Californians.
Well, a lot of African Americans from the South were moving to California hoping that there would be a whole new world. But in fact, the racism that was so prevalent in the southern part of the United States, it was here too. Tell us what happened next.
Yeah, so by the, early 1920s, maybe a little bit earlier, the white neighbors of this area in Manhattan Beach resented the Bruce's popularity. Going back through historic records and oral histories, I found people reported tires being slashed. The KKK reportedly set fire to a mattress under the Bruce's deck and torched another Black owned home nearby. Ultimately, Manhattan Beach, under pressure from a lot of their white residents, condemned the entire neighborhood in 1924 and seized more than 24 properties through eminent domain. They said it was because they needed a public park right now, and the Bruces didn't buy it, and three other Black families, along with the Bruces, sued, but they ultimately lost. And the what gets lost in the history is that a couple of the other Black families were able to move further inland but still stay in Manhattan Beach. But the Bruces were unable to move their seaside resort anywhere else. The city made that impossible. So they ended up leaving Manhattan Beach completely and ended up being chefs for other business owners for the rest of their lives. And the community in the neighborhood known as Bruce's Beach disappeared.
And this devastated some members of the Bruce family.
Yeah, I had a really powerful conversation with Anthony Bruce, the great great grandson of Charles and Willa Bruce. He's the only person in the direct family that is capable of talking about this history publicly. And it's continued to haunt, he said, a lot of his family members. His grandfather, Bernard, was angry with the world and just carried this with him. I mean, he lived through the condemnation and saw the unraveling of wealth and prosperity of his grandparents. And, Bernard, Anthony's grandfather, grew up in South LA. And, there are stories about how he got laughed at school when he told his classmates that his family used to own a beach resort like the Waldorf. Like, they didn't believe him. And it's just been a really painful history for his family.
Well, you're talking about, and you did it in the piece, generational wealth and the lack of opportunity to acquire generational wealth.
Yeah, the thing that gets lost in a lot of our debates right now about systemic racism and injustice is this idea of generational wealth. Some people in our country have been allowed to stay and build wealth and pass on wealth to future generations, and others have been blocked from doing so. I mean, I think of how we condemned this entire Latino, Mexican American owned community known as Chavez Ravine to build Dodger Stadium, and how we pushed out a lot of Japanese Americans during internment. And it's this uncomfortable history that we don't talk about enough when we talk about what we're dealing with today.
City officials, made it a park, gave it the name Bruce's Beach, nibbled around the edges, but that hasn't made it right. The family, though, went to that park and had a reunion. Tell us how important that is and what they want.
There's been this really incredible movement recently and also in recent years in reclaiming this space and honoring this history. The city did rename the park to Bruce's Beach in 2006, but the plaque, the commemorative plaque, people say is problematic. It kind of glosses over the uncomfortable and really hard parts of the history and glorifies the co-founder of Manhattan Beach. And the family has had an incredible family reunion there. And the movement right now, like they're asking for the land back. They're asking for restitution on 95 years of wealth and business loss. They are asking for schools in Manhattan Beach to teach this history. They are, when I spoke to one of the family representatives, they said that this money they envision possibly starting a history center in the town or, providing some kind of scholarship for Bruce family members.
Well, it's an important story. Thank you for sharing it with us, and do come back if there's any update on restitution.
Thank you, Lisa.